Welcome, beautiful person. Thank you so much for being here. Before we do anything right now, I'd like you just to take a moment and thank yourself for being here. You might be feeling a little bit of fear or a little bit of doubt, wondering, is this going to work for me? Before anything else, right, acknowledge the fact that you are doing something different and you are stepping outside what's familiar and outside your comfort zone. And that's okay to experience a little bit of self-doubt, a little bit of fear creeping in. It's normal. It's quite normal, and you'll learn all about this as we work through and you understand more about how you operate. So that's okay. It's worth acknowledging right now. It's okay to be where you are and just feel what you feel, because by the end of 10 weeks, you're going to be feeling very different. You're going to have lots of aha moments. Now, what we're going to be doing is, when we do this first part of the workshop, is work through this part of the program, which I've put together. Now, there's going to be 4 shifts that you must make, all right, which is going to take you out of the state of overwhelm, exhaustion, negativity, okay, so that you can enjoy more energy, happiness, confidence, inner peace, and harmony. And to do that, all right, we need to make these 4 shifts. So I will number each shift. You'll see them as they come up on the slide. Now, if you need to pause, please pause, okay, the recording and work through your workbook. So that's the next step. Make sure you have your workbook with you right now, because this is about doing, okay? Because you know what? We can gather all the information that's available, and the internet, there is, oh my goodness, trillions of bits of information out there. However, if we don't do something with the information, then nothing changes. So grab your workbook and we're going to work through it. So every time we have to do some work in the workbook, pause, all right, and do what you need to do. And then you can come back to the program. All right, so let's begin. Overcome self-sabotage behavior in your life and achieve lasting weight loss without dieting. So who is this for? Do you feel burned out, exhausted, hate exercising? Maybe you're stuck in life, a job, in a relationship. You can't shift the weight. You're feeling anxious, depressed. You binge and or emotionally eat. Maybe you have a negative mindset, attitude. Self-talk is just terrible in your mind. Do you experience more bad days than good? And you're sick of counting calories and dieting? Maybe you're lacking motivation, passion, and purpose in life. You're missing direction, meaning, and significance. Or perhaps you're feeling lost, disconnected from yourself and others. Are you in a constant state of overwhelm, trying to find clarity, and you don't know how to get it, but you know it's there and there's more to life? So what are you going to learn? This is a really good question. What's this all about? Well, what you're going to learn is how to reclaim and cultivate boundless energy and feel lighter, even if that feels totally impossible right now. You're going to develop confidence in who you are, and you're going to find your motivation to have direction, meaning, and significance and achieve your goals. You're going to learn how to recognize and understand the triggers of your negative emotions, how they can serve and empower you to make better decisions in your life rather than enslave you. And you're going to learn how to detox and transform your mindset to reconnect to yourself and create a better attitude to experience more good days in your life. You're going to learn how to shed limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck and holding you back from living an amazing life, and how to transition from feeling overwhelmed to having clarity and focus in your life by identifying the things that are important to you. So I'm going to make a promise to you. I have right here a step-by-step strategy on how to loosen the struggle of self-sabotage that is holding you back in life, and finally get clarity to bring your life back into balance to achieve happiness, success, and inner peace. Now, before we go any further, there's some house rules. Now, this applies to every time you jump in and continue with the program. It's really important that you do give it 100% commitment, because the more you put into this, the deeper the change. Okay, you'll only get out of it what you are prepared to put into it. Turn off your distractions. So if you've got your phone right now and you're checking it, okay, or you've got your iPad there, or you've got another computer screen that's there in the room, okay, put everything on silent or do not disturb. Particularly, you're going to have to get used to doing this when you listen to your recordings, your hypnosis recordings. Even better, put things away. Close down all your social media and any messages. This is time for you. All right, you've committed to this, so I'm going to hold you accountable to yourself, all right, to turn off the distractions. As I said, this is going to give you more focus and allow you to be present so that you can connect in and really, all right, get in tune with yourself. This is really important because the first start of change is awareness. And this is about bringing your awareness inward. If you're focusing too much on the outside, all right, you're not paying attention to yourself and what you need. And you're going to learn a lot more about this as we progress through the program. It's important to participate. So have your workbook and do the questions, do the answers, right? Because this is really important. This is about reflection. This is about digging deeper into yourself, getting to know yourself more. So it is very much about action and participating. And take notes in your workbook. As I said, this is an active workshop. It's about doing. And write down any questions. And if you need any email support at all, please email me or email our team and we will get back to you. Okay, it really is important that you've got questions, and a lot of the questions will be answered as we go along. So when you write them down, and then you'll find your answers, then you can tick that off. Okay, so now that house rules are done and everything's switched off and I've got your undivided attention, let's start. Does this sound like you? You feel no matter how hard you try, you keep finding yourself in the same circumstances, feeling like you're getting nowhere. Maybe you're exhausted, burned out, overworked, with little time for the things that you enjoy. You feel an emptiness, no connection with yourself, family, friends, or your partner. Maybe you're lacking motivation, confidence, courage, purpose, and direction in your life. You're putting other people's needs before your own because you don't know how to set healthy boundaries. You feel like you're running out of time and you have something that you missed out on and you have a regret about that. Perhaps you're feeling sad and depressed that you are living in the past, or you are fearful and anxious of what tomorrow holds, or you're hesitant of change. Whatever it is, you know something's not right, but you don't know how to get out of it. Or maybe you are one of the 90% of people who make New Year's resolutions that don't seem to stick with you, and your health has not improved. You're sick of playing it small, being afraid of failure, or even afraid to try something different. Your self-talk, your beliefs and attitudes keep you stuck in patterns of self-sabotage. Do you feel like the longer you dream of having a life you love, the more it feels like a pipe dream? You feel even more stuck, unbalanced, and feel like you're wasting and running out of time, and that today will be the same for the rest of your life. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's change ahead. And I do feel for you. And what I can say, it isn't what you think it is. And it's really important for you to acknowledge that it's not your fault. And you're going to learn why that is. You see, when you shift your mindset, you'll wake up in the morning feeling energized and inspired to start your day. You'll have motivation and passion to take the actions to live the life you dream of. You'll no longer be just surviving, you'll be thriving every day. You'll have shattered your limiting beliefs and be moving towards your dream life. You'll feel comfortable and confident in your own skin whilst no longer caring for the approval of others. And you'll know your body's signals and messages intimately to create inner peace, harmony, and wholeness. So who am I? Now, you may have had some insights into me before you signed up, but this is me. Lie. I'm a master practitioner life coach, master practitioner of NLP, a timeline therapist, master practitioner, conscious hypnotherapist, a certified clinical hypnotherapist. Now, there are two different ones. I'm a wellness coach, and I'm a Cert 3 and 4 fitness professional, master practitioner of matrix therapy, passion and purpose coach, and this is my favorite. I'm an entrepreneur and mum of 2 awesome kids. Now, I mentioned before about conscious hypnotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist. And what you're getting with me is traditional hypnotherapy as well as modern, okay? Because there are 2 very distinct types of hypnotherapy. So that's what you're going to be getting as you progress through our program. But a little bit more about me is, I was in my 40s and I was bullied and struggled through a very male-dominated corporate career. And I had an unhappy marriage and I was under enormous financial stress. So not only did I have 2 failed relationships with my children's fathers, yes, I've got 2 kids with 2 separate fathers, 10 years apart, I also had 2 failed businesses. And I ended up both divorced, separated, and bankrupt. And I had to move back in with my parents, with my young children. I was stuck in a rut and I lost a part of me, and it wasn't the weight. I felt unworthy and I kept asking why this is happening to me. I knew I was a good person, so what's going on here? Why am I keep getting cheated on? Why am I being treated like this? So I was very much playing victim. But it was at my lowest point when I knew something had to change because my life was not working out. And I thought, wow, all my insecurities, my fears and my doubts, they were only serving to give me an emptiness on the inside. And I remember I looked at my kids and I felt guilt. I felt shame and disappointed that I'd put them through my stuff. Going bankrupt, I had a fitness studio at the time, was pretty devastating. So there was an enormous amount of shame with that. But I realized that both myself and my kids, we deserved more. And that's why I invested in myself and our future. And I actually worked with a coach to heal from my past, rediscovered who I am to transform myself and my life. So despite all the challenges, I want to tell you that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And there is a way to take back your conscious control of your mind and to install new mental programs to do things differently for a different result. And that's why you're here, right? So what we're going to do is go on a beautiful journey of transformation together over the next 10 weeks. But I thought it was important for you just to get a little bit more insight into who I am. Yeah, so this is me. This is when I put on, 22 kilos with my son. And then 10 years later at 44, I put on 25 kilos with my daughter. So I look pretty different there. And then this is me. Oh gosh, 10 years or 8 years later. And then, this is me in 2014. I went from one extreme to the other. But either way was not healthy. So I wasn't healthy being overweight, and I certainly wasn't healthy in that state of bodybuilding. So I starved myself and I obsessed over calorie counting and exercising to the point where sometimes I was exercising 3 times a day. So that's not healthy. Can you imagine what that would be like? Yeah. So both ways was not healthy at all. So I finally found my balance. And this is what I'm here to help you with. So I've been through it, and it's really important that I show you that, not just tell you, but I want you to see, wow, different person. And look, I'm so happy with who I am right now. And the sense of freedom is absolutely incredible. So this is what this whole journey is about for you. So these mindset shifts that I mentioned, you must apply to overcome the self-sabotage so that you can wake up energized, motivated, and loving your life. And I'm going to walk you through each one of them. Navigating the map of our world. Now, we run on our brain's language on what we call metaprogramming, and that's an internal map of our reality. And this is how we determine how we motivate ourselves, how we make decisions, how we buy things, things that we're interested in, how we manage our time, and how long we stay in a job or relationship. It's literally our effectiveness with how we do tasks and how we solve problems. Now, these are programs which guide and direct other processes, hence the meta. But because of this, they play a big part in what others see as our personalities. And we tend to forget that they are things that we do rather than who we are. So let's have a look. Okay, so imagine this is you. And what happens is every day we go about our life and we experience external events. So there's things that happen outside of us. We go to work, we're at home, we engage with people, all these things happen. And what happens is as we're going about our day, we're actually taking in 11 million bits of information per second. Now, that's an incredible amount of information. But our brains, our conscious part of our brain, can only process about 130 bits of information per second. And what it does with that information is actually chunking it down about 3 to 9 chunks. So on average, about 4 or 5 chunks is what we can manage. And this is a real good tip here. So if you're setting yourself some goals, all right, really you want to sort of have stepping stones along the way of about 3, maybe 4 steps. Any more than that, we start to get overwhelmed and we start to lose focus. So that's a really handy tip there to know. So what happens is we're actually inputting data. And how we do that? Well, we're using our things like our senses of visual, auditory, kinesthetics, olfactory, and gustatory. So it's really what we see, what we hear, what we sense and feel, and what we smell and taste. That's our senses. That's how we input that data. So what happens is all that data goes in, and this is what directs our thought process and our behaviors. And this is also where we delete, we generalize, and we distort in the information. That's how we chunk it down through what we call our filters. And our filtering system is made up of our values, our beliefs, our decisions, our memories, and our attitudes. And it's different for all of us. And you'll learn why sometimes, we just don't see another person's map and we find it very hard to navigate on their map. So what happens is, right, we get all these bits of information, this data that's coming in, and we filter it. And then we get our internal representation of the world that we live in. This is how we perceive our reality. And we make up our stories, our self-talk, our beliefs and values from our internal representation of the world that we live in. Then what happens is we have what we call an emotional state or our state of mind. And this is made up of our feelings, positive and negative feelings. Then what happens is our body responds, all right, to our feelings. So for instance, if you're feeling a bit of panic, all right, something's happening and you're starting to feel that yourself get into a panic, all right. So what's happened is you've got something, there's an external experience. It comes in through our filters, all right. So you have a belief, memories, decisions, attitudes to whatever has happened, and then it's given you an internal representation. And then you start to talk to yourself and you might say, oh, no, this is happening again. I'm going to go and have a panic attack, all right. So this is the story that you have. And then you feel, that state of panic. You start to feel the anxiety. then your body responds. You might start to, get the sweaty palms, the heart races, your breathing rate increases, your body temperature rises. Okay, so you can start to see, right, how that sends off literally, right, a chain of events. Then what happens is we have the behavior. This is our output. Okay, so it's really important to understand that what we see and experience with the world, it's who we are. So we see and experience the world as we are. Yeah. So you can see sometimes it's a bit like when you see an accident and the police go around and they get everyone's version who witnessed the accident, and there'll be differences in it because someone may see something more, but someone may hear something more. All right, so there's different senses at play here, different values, beliefs, different attitudes. All these things have an influence on our internal representation of the world and our reality, the way that we perceive our reality. And sometimes in relationships, and you may relate to this, you might be frustrated that my partner's just not getting it, doesn't understand me. And they probably don't and never will, because their map of the world is different. But you can be different, but still have respect and can still find solutions. Okay. And this is where it's really important to understand. Certainly as a coach, we have this philosophy that the map is never the territory. So we never put our map on someone else's map. And that's why, from our perspective, we don't judge, because I've never spent a day in your life. I've never walked a day in your shoes. So I don't know what you perceive, what your values are, what your beliefs are, what memories that you have stored there in your subconscious mind. And that's why it's so important when you're doing this course over the next 10 weeks that your experience, your journey will be very different to every other person. And it's unique to you because you have your own map of your world. So it's really important that you understand we're all different. We're made different. We think different. And it's actually really good to be different and unique. So here's a good one here. The 6 and 9. Just because you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong. You just haven't seen life on my side. And yet they're looking at the same figure. So this is about perception. So your reality is based on the way you perceive things. And that's a really good way to look at sometimes when we have differences with other people. Sometimes they will never see it from your side. Yeah. So this is where, as I mentioned before, it's about really understanding your map of your world so that you can make decisions that are good for you. And when you've got to check in for the ecology, make sure that it's good for others and the greater good for the community. Okay, so this is where, sometimes perception, you can be different, but you can still work together with differences. Ready for shift number 1? Now look at these 2 rabbits. There's an old Chinese proverb. If you chase 2 rabbits at once, you catch none. Now, for most of us, we're trying to chase more than 2 rabbits at once, right? And how overwhelming and exhausting is that? Now, when you think about these 2 rabbits, rabbits don't run in a straight line. They dart across, right? So if you're chasing 2 and you're trying to focus on catching them, it's literally impossible. So who can relate to being in a state of overwhelm? Now, I'm not saying you don't need to find balance in all your commitments and everything that you do in life. But what I am saying is for you to find true balance, you have to start somewhere. And the place to start is from focus. Because if you look at these 2 rabbits going in different directions, where do you go? Like imagine areas in your life where you're in a constant state of overwhelm. Do you know what overwhelm is? I'll actually tell you my perception of overwhelm. It's a full brain. It's having to think about work, studies, family, relationships, finances, cooking, cleaning, bills. The list goes on and on and on. and there's hardly any room left in there, and it becomes clouded and overwhelming. And what we really need is to create some space and find focus and clarity in our lives and bring back some of that balance. Because when you discover what to focus on in your life, you actually activate what we call your RAS. So have a guess. Do you know what the RAS is? What it stands for? Yeah, let's have a look. The reticular activating system. This is your powerhouse. This is what helps you get clarity and focus and the motivation to get all the resources that you need. And this is what drives you to achieve the goal. It's pretty awesome, right? So imagine if you could have absolute laser focus and clarity in one area of your life to create balance and harmony and achieve your biggest goal. So where your attention goes, this is where your energy flows and the results show. So your RAS takes what you focus on and it creates a filter for it. It then sifts through the data and it presents only the pieces that are important to you. So remember before when I spoke about those 11 million bits of information per second? Yeah, and then we have to chunk it down to 134 bits of information per second. And the beautiful thing about this, when it chunks it down, it all happens without you even noticing. So this is your unconscious part of your brain at play here. And this is where all your beliefs, right, that get triggered by our emotions come from. So if you think about it, about your life, can you imagine if you had absolute laser focus and clarity in one particular area to help you create balance and harmony and achieve your biggest goal? So your RAS helps you to organize all the 11 bits of information that I just mentioned, chunks it down to 134 bits. And what it's doing is it's filtering out all the other stuff, all the white noise, all the things that take your energy, your time, all those valuable resources away from you. Okay, and when we can get rid of a lot of that and focus on what's important to us, this is when we start to achieve. This is where we start to really focus our energy, our time. These are really very important and powerful resources that we have. So let me ask you, have you ever wanted to purchase a particular car? And this is a really good example. And once you focus on that particular model and that color even, you start to see it everywhere. You know, you're driving around, you think, wow, so many people have this car. And I didn't realize this color was so popular. Well, see, this is your RAS. This is your RAS system directly in play here. So it's taking what you are now focusing on and it's creating a specific filter for it. And it's sifting through all the other data. So it's sifting through all the other cars that don't mean anything to you. Okay, it's sifting through all that and it's presenting to you only the pieces that are important to you. And as I mentioned, all of this happens without you even noticing. It's instant. You don't even have to think about it because you just activated it. So it's an actual unconscious program that you're now using. So imagine if you could have absolute laser focus and clarity in an area at work or another area of your life to create the balance and harmony that you want so that you can achieve your biggest goal. And this is where your daily intention sets your reticular activating system to work. So what are you focusing on and what are you not focusing on? But let's have a look at what you're also tolerating. So in this part, we're looking at tolerations. We're looking at what are you putting up with? See, we tend to get dragged down and overwhelmed by things that accumulate over time, and we end up cluttering our minds with all this stuff. And you may not want to do anything about them right now, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to get them out of our head. And this is what's going to raise our awareness. And then you'll naturally start to handle, fix, and resolve things. Because once they're out of your head, you can see it. It starts to become something separate from you instead of just stuck and going around looping in your mind. You know what I mean? You know it's there. I mean, if you look around your room at the moment, have you got piles of clutter? And you know that it's there, but you just put it off. You're in denial, you just ignore it. But subconsciously, you know it's there. So what I'd like you to do now is go to your workbook and you'll see you've got a sheet there called tolerations. And this is where you're going to get an opportunity to identify what you're tolerating. So when we work through it, I want you to pause this section in a moment and take the time, and I want you to write down as many things as you can in your workbook. So let's now move to our workbook. Okay, let's have a look. So tolerations, what are you putting up with? See, as I mentioned before, we tend to get dragged down. And this is what really, sometimes you hear this saying, I feel like I'm dragging the chain. I'm just dragging myself around. All that stuff that you've got stored in there, it literally is weighing you down. And this is when we get overwhelmed and we don't know where to start. And we accumulate more and more things over time, only to clutter our minds even more. So you may not, as I said before, want to do anything about them right now, but this is your opportunity to do exactly that, do something about it. So this exercise is about getting you to write on this list and identify all the things that you're tolerating. Write as many items as you can. So it could be, I've got some examples there, incomplete tasks, frustrations even, poor processes and procedures that you've got that you want to look at some point and make better. Unresolved issues or problems, you need to speak to somebody about something, but you just keep putting it off and not putting it off, and every time you're putting it off, all you're doing is just taking up more mental bandwidth in there. Even cross boundaries, poor morale. That's another thing that takes up space. It's dense, heavy energy. Overdue bills, invoices, outdated designs, even feelings of guilt from not doing something or, not saying something that you should be saying. Things like exercise, not doing the exercise, but you're thinking about it and you should. So all this time and focus and energy is going towards the things that you should be doing, but you're not doing. Cleaning, things that you've got to sort out, anything that's undone that that you need to get it done, but you're just not. Indecision, things that we procrastinate on, whatever they are, what I want you to do is pause and write on this list as much as you can. Now, I've got quite a few spaces there, but the idea of this is you're going to be continuing putting things on the list and crossing things off. And what I want you to do is I want you to pick one action that's going to reduce something that you're putting up with. And put it this way, when we stop for a moment and we cross something off our list, I want you to really think about how good that feels. That sense of accomplishment. Goodness me, I got it done. Cross it off. Like really tap into how that feels, because that feeling is a part of what helps motivation, because motivation is about feeling. Because if we're not motivated and we don't feel the thing that we want to do, we don't do it. So there's a little tip there for you. So pause now and start writing out all the things that you're tolerating and putting up with. How did we go with the list? And did you put something off the list? Scratch it off. And for some of you, you may have done a couple of things, because sometimes when we do one thing, it's like, oh, well, I might as well do that because that's connected to this. And so you can start crossing several things off your list. But this is something that I'd like you to go back to often so that you can refer back to your list and then get it off the list. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about Lisa. So Lisa was a high-flying corporate manager in a banking organization. And she had a whole mind full of so much stuff. She was looking after, like several teams, about 200 people in total. So you can imagine having to run around and organize that, what's going on in her head. And what was happening was she was taking work home. Yeah, when she'd get home, she'd be exhausted. So there was very little energy left in her to devote and actually appreciate being at home with her family. She was just too exhausted. So her life was out of balance. And when we finally got all this stuff out of her head and started to work through things, and we worked through and unblocked a lot of the beliefs and things that were happening for Lisa, she finally found out that her life was not about having fun. She was all work and no play, had no me time or family time. And so now that her life is back in balance, it really is for Lisa the best feeling in the world. Shift number 2. If you don't know what you want, you won't know where to go, let alone how to get there. So many people get stuck in the how. They may know what they want, or they may not really know what they want, but they have an idea. But they get stuck in, well, I've got no idea how to get there and how to do this, how to say this. They get stuck and fearful of the process of how. And do you know what? The how actually comes later. The first thing you've got to know is what it is that you want, and the how will come. So let me ask you, are you always pleasing other people, doing things for them? Or do you know someone who always sets New Year's resolutions, always setting up goals, but they never complete them? Or maybe you know someone who is great at telling others what they don't want, but when it comes to knowing their own passions and purposes, or purpose and meaning, they have little clue. So they're really good at telling other people, but really they need to sort themselves out and really organize their own life. Or maybe they procrastinate with their own stuff, but again, happy to tell other people, what they should be doing. So all this, right, and look at this. Which way do you go? Like, I know there's a road straight ahead, but you're looking at all these distractions, all these U-turns, all these forks in the road, and it can become really overwhelming. So how many of you know what you really want in life? And it's great for people who do know what they want. However, I work with most people, which makes sense, that they don't know what they want. And as I mentioned, they're great at telling other people what they want, and they're probably great at telling me what they don't want. Oh, I don't want this, and I know I don't want that. And quite often as a coach, when I ask them, what is it you do want? There's that pause. Oh, well, actually, and they really don't know. Is that you? Maybe you're saying things, just think for a moment, you're saying things over and over, replaying in your head, I don't want to be eating that anymore. I've got to stop being so lazy. I keep wanting to go and sign up to do something, but I just got no motivation. I've got to stop drinking. I've got to stop smoking. So all the things that you got to stop doing, the unresourceful things, but it's like, well, how do I do that? And when we get stuck in the how, that cuts the motivation part straight at right there in its tracks. Motivation just goes boom, boom, got none, because it's too difficult. We get caught in that trap of wondering how do we do it, and we just don't do anything at all. Can you see how easy it is to keep telling the same story of what we don't want? Because our mind has been reprogrammed that way from our childhood. And this is what we call moving away motivation. We're moving away from what the discomfort and the pain is. And this is why it's so important to recognize and understand and know what our values are. What are the things that are important to us at the core, at the center of who we really are? And when we do, this is moving towards pleasure. This is more what motivation is made of. It's easier and far more long-lasting to utilize the unconscious, which is also far less energy, by moving towards the things that we find pleasure in and have reward in. And I mean resourceful pleasure and resourceful rewards. So this is what we're about to do. Let's get some clarity on what is important to you. Let's clarify what you want. Our values are what motivates us towards the things we want and to take action to achieve the things that we want in life. 2020 was a momentous disruption and it's changed our world. However, it's also been an opportunity to connect with what are your values and what are the things that are important to you. For many people, they've had to be forced to pause, and I've helped my clients as well as myself to create a vision of what life looks like and to be the person who clearly knows what they want. Have you had moments in your life when you can't find the motivation to stick to a diet or to an exercise program? See, what that is, that's willpower. And that's 4% of your brain capacity. What would you do if you could tap into the other 96% of brain power and have a new program that drives you towards success easy and effortlessly? Well, you can. And the first step towards retraining your brain is tapping into what you want. And if you aren't sure, there is one question you need to ask yourself. What is important to you? You see, if you aren't clear on what your values are, you could end up living someone else's life, doing what they want. And when we get into that state, we can easily end up being resentful and fall into a depression because our needs are not being met. And we feel a sadness and disappointment in where we are in our lives. If that rings true, it's a very important step right now in retraining your brain to discover your own values and to start to live in alignment with them. Our values influence what we do, how we think, and how we feel about the world around us. When we do or see things that go against our values, we do feel sad, we feel bad, and we get mad. And when we live a life in a way that aligns with our values, we feel great, we're authentic, we feel fulfilled, and we're happy. Let's have a look at the anatomy of the mind. This is where it gets really interesting. So you can see this iceberg. Now, this top part is the conscious part of our mind. This is the beta brainwaves. It's 4% of our capacity. So you can understand before when I mentioned that's where willpower is. It's a pretty small percentage when you think about it. This is where we have these things in our head that says we're not good enough, we're not smart enough. We spend a lot of our time here. This is where all our superficial ideas are stored. It requires effort and energy here, and a lot of our likes and dislikes are stored. As I mentioned, it's our willpower. This is our thinking part of our mind. It's our intellectualism. This is our analytical, logical, rational thinking, our critical part of our mind. It's like a mini processor. And it's also where some of our negative self-talk sits. Personality, a lot of some habits. It's often in the past or in the future tense. And it's where a lot of our limiting beliefs are created and stored. And it has very limited abilities. And it has also short-term memory, and very much is where our judgment and our self-esteem sit. Now, when we go a little bit deeper down into the subconscious mind, this is the other 96%. This is why there is so much untapped potential. This is the alpha and theta brainwave state. Now, in here, this is where we have a lot of insights. This is all programmed by thoughts. This is where our true genius lies. And this is where we can melt away dysfunctional emotional issues. This is where all our thoughts, feelings, and experiences are stored. It's like our memory file. And this is also where we can change our life. And this is where we access through hypnosis. So when you start to listen to your hypnosis tracks, I'm going to be taking you on a journey where we go down through alpha and theta brainwave states. This is where a learning state is, where you can start to make changes subconsciously. It's always on. Subconscious never switches off. This is also a part of our higher self. It's your intuition. It's tapping into your gut feeling. It's the super processor, and it's incredibly small, but the power of visualization, and as I mentioned, intuition, it's where our deep thought is. I mean, look at all this space here. This is where we can relax and discover our deepest passions and make life what we truly desire. Imagination and curiosity sits in here. It's very inventive. It's wise. Remember I said before, it's about our gut feeling. And this is where we find our true authentic self and our inner peace. It's where all our mental imagery sits. It's incredibly powerful. And all our untapped talents lie right down here in the subconscious mind. And it is unlimited. It's very self-healing, and this is what this program is all about. You're on a transformational journey, but it's about healing. And this is where we can break through mental barriers. And hypnosis is a medium and a vehicle to help you tap into, and breaking through those mental barriers. It's about harnessing the power that you all have to change your life. And this is where permanent memory storage is. Now, the unconscious mind, or the delta brain waves, this is again, it's tapping into even a deeper level, a real deep spiritual connection. This is where your immune system, cellular memory, it's the core of who you are. It's your primary instinct. It has incredible benefits here. It's all automatic, okay? And it's your body system regenerates down here. And this drives our dreaming state. And this is where we access the collective consciousness. Isn't that powerful? And do you know what? You have it within you. And we're about to go on an amazing, magical journey to tap into your unlimited power of your unconscious mind. Now, this is Christine. And the reason why I'm bringing up real life clients to you is to not only inspire you, but I want you to put yourself in your own story and the potential. So this is about expanding and breaking through your own limitations and boundaries of thought. Now, Christine came to me. She's a devoted wife and mother, and her children all grew up and had left home. And so that was just her and her husband. They actually sold the big family home, and they were renting one of the children's homes while they were in transition, wondering what to do next. Now, his vision was to retire up in a nice apartment up on the Sunshine Coast by the beach, where they were close to, local restaurants and shops, and just a stroll to the beach, where the hustle and bustle is, so to speak, on the Sunshine Coast. Now, Christine, on the other hand, she wanted to get off the grid. She wanted to, see green grass. She even wanted to see cows. She just wanted to breathe, get off the grid, she would say. And you can see in here in some of her pictures on her vision board, some of the things that she wanted to achieve. And she really struggled, being a people pleaser, to tell this and express this to her husband. And we worked through this so that she could find her voice and be able to speak to him about what it is that she wanted. Now, when this all happened with Christine, this was back in March 2020, just before we went into the first lockdown of COVID. And when we went into the first lockdown, it was in the April, and that was Easter time. Now, they had planned to go away for Easter, but because of, with COVID coming out, all plans were cancelled. And so they spent Easter at home. Now, she thought, well, what are we going to do here? So she was going through on her phone, she said, and she come across, and she said, I don't know how this happened, but I come across this property up on the Sunshine Coast. And I thought, oh, when we get out of lockdown, maybe we can go and have a look. And she mentioned this to her husband. He was like, yeah, okay, we'll go up, but all I'm going to do is have a look. Don't want to do anything more, but have a look. So they've gone up their lockdown. We got out of lockdown and she went up there. And she said they were going through the property, and all she heard, actually before that, I have to mention, Andrew had said to her, if you like the place, don't say anything. Don't make any noises. Don't sound like you're excited, because we don't want the real estate agent to, think about knowing what we're thinking. And I think you can relate to that. So they walked through, and she said, we hadn't even gotten into the main part of the house, and all I could hear Andrew saying was, oh, I'm in trouble, which was so sweet. And it was her way of, because he was very much a visual person and a very kinesthetic person, so it was her way of being able to communicate to him about what it is that her vision was. But the beautiful thing about it was they actually purchased the property. So this is why she says here, creating a vision board has had a powerful effect on her efforts to achieve her future goals. So magically, within no time, I was able to successfully cross off some of those goals, and I highly recommend the process. And I have to show you this. This is the view out of her new home up on the Sunshine Coast. And have a look at this. She's got cows. It's actually the property that she bought was on an old dairy farm, and right next door are these cows. Isn't that beautiful? So your subconscious has unlimited potential. It is a vast reservoir of imagination, tapping into so much more of your power than you can ever think possible. And I want you to hold on to that as you look at Christine and what she achieved for herself. Literally, I tell you, that was in the March we did that. And this was in, I think they moved in, I think it was July that they moved in. So within months. So what can you put in your mind? All right, I've just start planting a little seed. Start to be curious. What is it that you're starting to see now that you are decluttering all those things that were taking up that space? What can you start to see right now? So grab your workbook because we're about to clarify your values. Now, the first part here, this is where understanding that our values are what motivate us towards the things that we want and to take action to achieve the things that we want in life. So take a moment and think about the times when you've been really happy. What were you doing? Who were you with? And take a moment and think about, who is someone that you admire? What about them do you admire? When we focus on other people's needs and wants, all we do is we stop spending time on ourselves to discover what we want and what we need. And as I mentioned before, when we don't get our needs met, we build resentment, anger, and we start to feel disappointed in ourselves. So this is why this exercise, clarifying your values, is very important. So what I'd like you to do is, in a moment, I'm going to get you to stop when we do exercise 1. But you see how there's 2 columns. What is important to you in life? And in the other column, what does that give you? And I really want you to connect into the feeling that it gives you. And I'll give you some examples. For instance, just say you're someone that loves to give to charities, that you like to help the vulnerable. What's the feeling does that give you? Is it contribution? Is it connection? Is it significance? So the feeling that it gives you. What about travel? What's the feeling that travel gives you? Oh, that sense of adventure. The freedom. When I'm traveling, I feel free. Here's another one. What about owning your own home? Well, that could be, I feel like I've got security. I've got my own home and I feel safe in my own home. So you can see that the feeling is the actual value. So it's feeling safe and secure. It's feeling, the sense of adventure and freedom. It's about connection and significance. So on the left-hand side, that's the action. That's what gives you, right, the feeling that's connected to your value. And this is why it's so important to live in alignment with your values, because that means you're doing the things that you want to do. You're following your passion and your purpose. Is that starting to make sense? So you're having some aha moments now. And can you see when you don't know what you value in your life and you're not living in alignment with them and you get off the rails and you start, you could be like feeling lost. And so what happens when you're feeling lost? You'll just hitch a ride on someone else's values and you'll start doing things to please them, or you'll start doing things with no real purpose. We have an authentic part of us deep within, as you saw, in the unconscious mind, and that is your right. And when we're tapping into that, which we're starting to do now, and I hope you're starting to see and feel and sense that, this is where you're starting to transform. So what I'd like you to do now is pause, and I'd like you to do exercise 1 and really think and tap into how that makes you feel. Okay, how did you go with exercise 1? Right, now let's move on to the next one. So exercise 2. Now there's questions on the left-hand side on the right-hand side for you to put your answer. So if we look at the first one, what do you want more of in your life? Now for some people, they feel a sense of loneliness, And I'm only using some examples here because there's so many. So I'm just going to use a couple of examples. So for someone who feels loneliness, what do they want more of in life? Connection. And that's what they value. So they're not feeling like they're living up to one of their values, in alignment with one of their values, which is connection. It's feeling like they have connection with others. And also, most importantly, is connection with yourself. Quite often, when we lose that connection with who we really are, our true self, our authentic self, we feel that disconnection. So you're starting to see that these questions are so powerful. What are your deepest desires? Now, I mentioned before, someone who loves travel, to them, it's the sense of freedom. So their deepest desire is freedom. That's what I value so much in my life. The next one, how would you like to spend your free time? Well, travel with my partner, travel with my family. The next one, how would you like to practice more self-care? And it could be meditation. It could be just eating healthy meals and not being dragged into what someone else wants to eat and having to appease their appetite. What about, what do you want to achieve in your life? For some people, it could be independence. For some people, happiness, to feel whole. What things in your life would you like to change? And this could be your career. It could be a relationship. It could be, the body, feeling fit because you're not feeling fit, you're unhealthy. And so really think about what is something that you want to change, and then really tap into your answer and what do you value about that. Now that you know what you desire and value in life, it's time to decide how you're going to spend your time and energy in the future. So take a pause right now, answer the questions in exercise 2, and I'll see you in a moment. We're moving on now to exercise 3. Now, with this particular exercise, refer back to the previous one, to exercise number 2, and your answers there. Because each of the questions, you're going to take into account your answers, and then you're going to ask yourself, how are you going to spend your time and energy to achieve what you value? So let's think. I remember when I said about giving to or volunteering to charities, and the value there was about connection. It was about contribution and significance. So what would this person do perhaps? Well, it could be volunteering a certain amount of time each month. It could be donating to a particular charity. Perhaps organising an event with this particular charity. So see how that's all doing. What about the person who values the sense of freedom that travel gives them? So one of the first things would be to have a budget to make sure that they're organising enough funds to go on holiday. So they've got that in place. What's the next thing? Well, set a date. I want to go on holiday on this particular date. Where? So you're starting to see, what sort of things you can actually start to do to achieve and live that value. So take a moment now. And it's also worth mentioning that down the bottom here, I've put values are unique to each and every one of us. There's no right or wrong, only who you are. And our values can change throughout the course of our life, but typically our core values pretty much stay with us. And this is why it's so important to live in alignment with your values. Welcome to shift number 3. This is the mindset detox. This is where we understand that your mindset is the sum of your knowledge, including all your experiences, your beliefs, values, and your thoughts about the world and yourself in it. It's your filter for information you receive in and the information that you put out. So how do you know it's time for a mindset detox? Let's look at some signs. to see when it's time to change your mindset and see if you can resonate with any of these. Everything you see and think is negative. You're constantly resisting or denying the truth and not taking responsibility. You're intensely worrying about everything. You are living and ruminating about the past or constantly fearful and dwelling on the future. Getting out of your comfort zone is not an option, so you stay stuck. Or perhaps you don't believe in yourself, so you procrastinate, form unresourceful habits, addictions, and feel disconnected and disengaged with life. Did any of those relate to you? Earlier, I spoke about people not clear on what they want and how it accompanies the how to get what I want. And so they don't know how to get it, so they don't even bother. Well, the reason why it's so important as a coach to not give people the information on the how is because there's no power in that. I'll show you right now where the power is. Now, people say knowledge is power. Well, I say belief is power. So let's have a look at what are beliefs. So what are beliefs? Beliefs are your perception of the way things are and what you believe to be true. But I tell you now, they're not necessarily true. It's your mindset, which is the sum of all your knowledge from all your experiences, beliefs, and your thoughts about the world and yourself in it. Limiting beliefs are assumptions and perceptions that you have about yourself and the world that in some way holds you back from achieving what you are capable of. And we're going to challenge some of your beliefs. Limiting beliefs. Let's have a look at this list and see what comes up for you. I'm not good, smart, pretty enough. I don't have enough time, money, experience. No one will listen to me or care about what I have to say. I can't be my real self or I'll be judged. I can't ask for what I want because I may get rejected. I'll never find another partner. Love is too painful. I'm too stupid, fat, ugly to be loved. All men and women are cheating, mean, violent drama queens. I can't make money doing what I love. You have to work too hard to get money. Rich people are greedy, evil, unhappy. Now, these are just some limiting beliefs. There are literally hundreds. What come up for you? The thing with limiting beliefs is they reside in our subconscious mind, which is why they seem to just pop up out of nowhere. And this becomes the story that we recreate time and time again. And this is what becomes our reality. So I'm curious, have you ever wondered why you believe what you believe? I'm going to give an example of how a limiting belief plays out. I have to work too hard to get or have anything good. Now, I have a client who grew up in a culture where his parents said to have anything good has to come from hard, honest work. And it sounds like it could be a useful belief, right? However, when it came to relationships, he believed that they had to be hard work to be good. So he self-sabotaged his relationships, making them so hard because he believed that anything relationship that was good had to come from hard work. Now, once he realized this belief that he had adopted and formed from a young child, he made some shifts and he actually found a loving relationship that was so much easier and loving. I wonder if how many of you can relate to that, or perhaps you can relate to it through work, like being a workaholic, doing all the long hours because, to have a rewarding career or to be recognized, you've got to work so hard, you've got to work longer hours, you've got to be seen to be doing so much more. It's a subconscious belief because really the reality is you can have those things but you don't have to necessarily work hard to have them. And when you find it coming easier to you, there's no need to feel guilty or to feel that you're doing something wrong because it's easy when it should be hard. Can you start to see how our beliefs form our behaviors and gives us the results that we have in our life? Where do they come from? Beliefs are formed when we are children. From the moment that we are born right through to 7, those first 7 years, we are imprinted from our primary caregivers, which is typically our parents. We take on their beliefs, we take on their values, we even take on their parental programming that they adopted. So those first 7 years, we are heavily imprinted, and we tend to accept the actions of those around us and what they say at face value. We believe them to be true. Can you see those first 7 years, how highly influenced we are from parental programming? And this shapes our early beliefs. Then what happens is from the age of 7 to 14, we begin to model behaviors from our siblings, friends, teachers, heroes, the TV that we watch, the music that we listen to, even the books that we read. As children, because we are unable to distinguish between truth and falsehood, when we are really young, we often accept what we are told as truth. And we are also greatly influenced by what we experience. So by the time we reach our adult years, we have well-formed beliefs that have been firmly planted in our subconscious mind that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. A 10-year-old boy was helping his father to build a shed. He was so excited and wanted to please his dad. However, he couldn't perform the task to his father's standard. He broke some tools and his angry father yelled at him, "You're always useless. You can't do what I say. Go inside and I'll do it." The young boy went into his room and cried his heart out, feeling alone in his pain, not knowing how to deal with it. So he bottles up his dad's angry words and he begins to feel unworthy, unloved, insecure, and learns a belief when things go wrong, it's his fault because he's useless and unable to live up to his father's standards. This young boy grew into a 40-year-old man going through a third separation with beliefs like, "I can't please any woman. It's not safe to love or trust someone. I'm alone with my pain. No one understands me. It's safer to be alone. I'm not good enough for anyone because there's something wrong with me." This harmful situation that happened 30 years earlier developed a limiting belief running a program in his subconscious about self-worthiness. He was a young boy eager to learn and help his father, and when he was yelled at by the person he trusted the most, it rocked his sense of security. He didn't know how to respond, so he internalized and formed unhealed childhood wounds and beliefs that he is not good enough, and when things go wrong, it's his fault because he always fails in the end. Even in his 40s, this man with his unhealed childhood wounds that he had consciously dealt with and which he had long forgotten was still unconsciously being triggered by events bringing up familiar negative emotions and beliefs stored in his subconscious, running a program in his life. You see, every memory we have has a meaning and an emotion attached to it, and these emotions are what the subconscious mind stores in its memory file and uses to guide our lives. The subconscious accesses these memories instantly and triggers the attached emotions again and again, running the same program, replaying it like it had happened that day. Childhood wounds, if not healed, stay hardwired as part of the adult psyche, playing out the same program every single time, keeping us wounded, unresourceful, and showing up in toxic relationships, stress at work, financial struggles, and affecting our mental and physical state of health and well-being. We learn what we live. We are influenced by adopted early childhood programming well into our adult years, until you heal and override that program by clearing the negative influence and emotions attached. Otherwise, your subconscious programming will experience the same feelings, behavior, and circumstances every single time throughout life. You can't run away from your inner mind. You can only heal, grow, and empower it to be resourceful and resilient. When you unlock the 96% of untapped potential and bring your unconscious mind into your conscious mind, you can reprogram your mind and change your inner game to become a true leader of your life, to experience more energy, balance, and freedom, and finally live a life of meaning, success, and happiness. Beliefs have the power to make your dreams come true or the power to destroy you. What happens is the limiting and negative beliefs are our brain's way to keep us safe, but it's a false sense of safe. And it just keeps us surviving. That's just a couple of the prime directives of the subconscious mind. Our brain is built for surviving, not thriving. So limiting and negative beliefs also prevent us from fulfilling our true potential, and it holds us back. And what it does do, it fertilizes the seeds of negative thoughts and emotions which create our reality. Therefore, the beliefs that got you to where you are today won't necessarily get you to where you want to be tomorrow. What do you think will happen if you continue to have that limiting belief? We are not our thoughts or the story we create. What we are and who we are is the awareness that sits behind our thoughts and our emotions. Well, I've got good news for you. You can challenge and update your beliefs. You see, the biggest shift to start the process of change is to become aware that what you believe to be true is the reason you are stuck. Once you shift and update your belief system, you'll create change. You can create the ideal conditions for the seeds that you are planting to thrive and produce the life that you are destined to produce. The negative beliefs programmed in the subconscious mind can be changed, and you can retrain your mind and install a new set of positive beliefs. What came up for you? You see, we can't change the past, but what happens is our subconscious has filed all the events that's ever happened to us and everything we've ever experienced. So every memory that we have stored in our memory file has a meaning attached to it. And attached to the meaning are emotions. And it's these emotions that the subconscious mind uses to run programs to guide our lives. And I'll give you an example. Have you ever been or remember going to a music concert and it was fantastic? You had the best time. It was awesome. And you hung on to the ticket. Now, every time you come across that ticket, it brought up the meaning that, oh, that's right. It reminds me that was an awesome time. The music was great. I had the best time ever. And you feel good about that. Now, we know that that ticket is useless. You can't go back and watch it again. You've already spent the ticket. But we kept it because it's got a meaning attached to it. And as I mentioned just then, attached to the meaning are the emotions. So we go through life and it's the emotions, beliefs, and values that influence our behaviors and form habits hardwired in us like a computer program. And we're going to do a process. We're going to write down the limiting beliefs, because once you've actually uncovered them, this is really key, because the writing process allows you to bring in a new awareness. So then you can examine, observe, and feel the emotion the limiting belief brings up for you. This is a really powerful shift, because when you understand that the essence of a limiting belief is emotion. You'll see that the reason you have developed a limiting belief was that you were experiencing overwhelming emotion. In those very early years as children, we don't typically understand what the emotions are. We just absorb and experience the emotion. We can't logically understand them until we're older. But what happens is, in your mind, you've already created an interpretation which became your limiting belief. And that core emotion is stored within you, waiting for a time that you'll be able to feel it. And this is the missing piece of most mindset strategies and practices. It's our emotions. I call them emotional hooks. And they get triggered time and time again. And each time they are triggered, we stack that belief with more and more charged emotions. And then we get going and we just, get set off and we react instantly. And we react in a way that really doesn't serve us, to the point that it actually angers us. We feel guilty and we start doing a process called metastating, and we feel guilty about the way that we reacted. So our emotions are the very thing that drives our behavior. So it's time to have a look at your limiting beliefs. So go to your workbooks now, and what you're going to do is you're going to answer some questions. Now, the first thing that we're going to do in this exercise is you're going to have a look at this list. And I want you to take your time and I want you to read each statement. Tap into and get a sense whether or not the statement feels familiar to you. Now, it's usually the first thing that comes up. If you're thinking about it too long, all right, you're starting to tap into your conscious part of your brain. So it's the first thing that comes up. And consider where you've heard the statement from. Perhaps it's someone you observed in your life, like a parent, a teacher, or maybe you found yourself saying it to yourself or to others. But tick any belief that you resonate with. And as I said, don't overthink it. Now, after selecting all of your limiting beliefs, I want you to circle the top 6 beliefs that you frequently hear yourself saying to yourself, or that gets triggered the most. Now, in this process, if you recall any other beliefs that are not listed that come up for you, write them down in the extra space at the end of this exercise. So now pause and go through the list, and I want you to work out your 6 beliefs that you frequently hear yourself saying. How did you go? Did you get your 6? Or maybe there was some more that came up for you. So let's move on to the questions. Now, what are your most difficult circumstances that you believe are holding you back from the life that you desire? Now, it could be, I have to work hard to get or have anything good in my life. It could be, I need to work long hours to feel worthwhile. If I lose 15 kilos, I'll feel happy and find love. So write down what you believe that's holding you back, the things, the statements that you're saying that resonate with you that are coming up. So pop that down in question 1. So pause and answer this question. Now, question 2, overcoming one of these challenges will have the biggest impact on your life. Which challenge is it? Don't think too hard. What's the one that really stands out? Highlight it. Now, question 3, with reference to this challenging situation, what beliefs might be keeping you from moving forward? Now, I'll give you some examples here. I quite often get told in sessions things like, oh, my mother's side of the family is always big. I can't stick to anything. I always fail, so I don't even bother. Any relationship has to be hard work for it to be good and worthwhile. So you're starting to see these are some of the statements and beliefs that are creating the stories that you are replaying in your mind over and over again. Question 4. Analyze each of these negative beliefs. How can you be certain that they're true? Question 5. Where did you get these beliefs? This is where we evaluate the source to help determine if they have any validity in your life today. Who told you? Where or who did you hear that from in the past? 6. How would your life change if you eliminated these beliefs? That's a really powerful question. What would be different? 7. What positive beliefs would be better for helping you attain your goals? For each negative belief that's holding you back, come up with a positive belief that would support your desires. I'll give you an example. This is a common one that comes up. No one will ever love me again. So that's a negative belief that you formed. What if you flipped it and instead had the belief, I love who I am and the right partner will love me for me? Do you see how the energy changes? And that leads into number 6. How would your life change if you eliminated these beliefs? Simply by saying a statement like, I have had loving relationships, that's giving you evidence that you can find love. I have nurturing and supportive friends. This is evidence that you can bring up in your subconscious and bring it into your conscious part of your brain. And these are extremely powerful to start changing your beliefs. This is why number 7 is a very powerful question. What positive beliefs will be better for helping you attain your goals? So for each negative belief that's holding you back, come up with a positive belief that would support your desires. Number 8, what evidence supports these new beliefs? Now, I just mentioned that the fact that I have had loving relationships, so you do have evidence. You see, we are wired to think negatively, but we do have positivity in us. It's a choice, and this is what this process is helping you to shift. Let's move on to number 9. What will you do to replace your limiting beliefs with positive new beliefs? What do you prefer to believe in instead? And this is where you put your new decision here. This is where we upgrade ourselves. And you can change the statement to, I have an amazing capacity to love easily and completely. So this is where the power of what you say and believe drives your behavior and changes your life. It's important that you take your time with these questions. And I have some bonus reflective questions. Ask yourself, what surprised you? What come up? Sometimes the least obvious thing just doesn't present itself until we take that time and dig a little bit deeper. What do you think will happen if you continue to have that limiting belief? What do you think will happen if you clear and transform that limiting belief? And then what I've put here is some reflective thoughts, parental, ex-partner programming or patterns of behavior that have come up for you. This is an opportunity for you to write them down here. It's very important that you acknowledge and bring awareness to these beliefs, because this is what's been forming a lot of the programming in your subconscious. So that's limiting beliefs. So can you see how a belief has power over you? How it can drive you to where you want to be, and it can also drive you way the other way where you don't want to be. So this is where this part of the shift is extremely powerful in changing and transforming where you are in your life. Minding your thoughts to raise your happiness. This is an exercise to help grow your awareness and to start to really see where your thoughts create your reality. You see, I've got an example here of a friend that said that she was going to call someone and she didn't. Now, this particular person that was waiting for the call started to attach certain meaning, all right, to the thought that, oh, my friend didn't call. Oh, she must be mad at me. I didn't do anything to her. What's the problem? Oh, I'll just ignore her at school. And that created feelings of hurt and anger. Now, if she had better quality thoughts, such as, I wonder why she didn't call. Something must have come up. I'll check in with her later to make sure that she's okay. The feelings attached to those thoughts would have been empathy, compassion, concern. So you can see she could have stayed waiting and getting more angry and hurt by not getting the phone call. Or she could have been there thinking, oh, okay, something must have happened. I hope she's okay. And I'll check in on her later. So two different responses there because of the two different thoughts that were going in the mind. Now, I've got some wonderful quotes here. Look at this one. English philosopher James Allen, as a man thinks, so he is. As he continues to think, so he remains. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. Ralph Waldo, a man is what he thinks about all day long. And Earl Nightingale, we become what we think about. Now, all these great minds discovered the secret to living a happy, purposeful, and productive life, and it's this. We live in a world of thought. Our thoughts create our experiences, and therefore we experience what we think. So it's the quality of our thoughts then that create the quality of our life. You see, when we're unhappy where we are in life, we want to create change. So we go about transforming our environment, believing that, getting a new job, relationship, moving somewhere else, whatever it may be, will create the necessary change we hope to see. However, no matter how far we travel to escape our problems or what substances or habits we have to numb the mind to help us forget, we can't escape our inner self. It goes with you 24/7, 365 days a year. And for a lot of people, they fall back to where they started, unhappy with where they're at. And so the cycle repeats itself. And this happens because we falsely assume that change begins from the outside. And in truth, the environment does play a role in changing your circumstances, but it doesn't address the root cause, which is your thinking that drives the reason behind why you feel the way you do. And here's what you need to realize. If you want to create change from the outside, you must first change the inside. And that's why you're here right now, is it not? You must change the attention of your thoughts, because what you think directly influences how you feel, and how you feel directly influences how your body reacts, and how your body reacts directly influences how you behave. And how you behave comes to define who you are and what you experience in life. Remember when we first spoke about navigating the map of our world? So you really are what you think. If you get the inside right, the outside will fall into place. Beautiful quote from Eckhart Tolle. Thoughts in and of themselves have no power. It's only when we actively invest our attention into them that they begin to seem real. And when we engage with specific thoughts, we begin to feel the emotions that were triggered by these thoughts. And we enter a new emotional state, which then influences how we act. So, for example, if you're regularly engaging with the thought that you're a failure and you feed more attention to it, you'll start to feel down, worthless, you feel discouraged and perhaps even depressed. So how does your body react to this? Well, you sulk, you slump your shoulders, you project that you lack confidence, you don't want to talk to people. But if you engage with more empowering thoughts to boost your confidence, and this will trigger a more positive emotional state, your body will start to respond by standing up straight. You'll feel upbeat, you'll feel energized, you'll start to engage more with people. So you can see how if we get the inside process right, our operating system right, the outside will fall into place. So can you see you are what you think, and that this is how your thoughts create your reality. It really does begin with your thoughts. Our life experiences spring from the thoughts we actively engage in every single moment. And this big shift is to understand the link between your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And this leads us directly into our next shift, which is coming up about our emotions. Have you ever felt not good enough? This is how Hareti felt. She felt stuck and frustrated, and that feeling of not good enough. And she knew she wanted more out of life and out of work, and she wanted to find her passion. So when she did this mind shift and really started to do the inner work, then she started to feel the difference within herself. And she took all the learnings that she discovered and she started to make the positive changes in her life. So now her life is completely different. And it all starts with where you are right now, because the next 10 weeks you really are going to be in a completely different place. Shift number 4, suppression leads to depression. For a lot of people, when negative, uncomfortable emotions come up, they're likely to suppress them in an attempt to achieve that mental control over the thoughts that threaten their emotional well-being. But what happens is emotions get trapped in the body, and this is what causes anxiety, pains, and feelings of disease and discomfort. And over time, suppressed emotions develop into depression, and we start feeling fatigued, unmotivated, sad, and stuck in life. You see, when we suppress negative emotions, we suppress the positive ones as well. And Sigmund Freud said that unexpressed emotions will never die. They get buried alive and they come back later in uglier ways. And I'll give you a really good example. So imagine that you're in a swimming pool and you're holding down a beach ball under the water. And you're really doing everything you can. As a matter of fact, you're even putting your whole body on it just to keep it under the water. And it's actually supporting you, isn't it? It's keeping you up. That's how much energy, right, that beach ball has. And really what it wants you to do is to let it go. And the moment that you do let it go, it just comes up and it floats on the surface, happily floating away. And that's the same with a lot of our emotions. We do have to experience them because our emotions have messages for us. And when we're in tune and understand what those messages are that it's trying to communicate to us, we can make better decisions in our life. And this is what we're going to talk about today. You see, emotion is energy, and you can't destroy or eliminate energy. It's law of physics. Energy can only change forms, which means that by feeling painful emotions, even the ones that you felt as a child, you'll be transforming that energy into something else, into your truth, who you really are. When we start to feel it, we can start to heal it. Or when we start to feel it, we can free it. So whatever you're thinking right now, I want you to imagine that you can put that in a thought bubble or a balloon, whatever it is, whatever the thought is, just pop it in there and label it with the feeling and the emotion that you're feeling. Notice it as a thought. What do you feel right now with this thought? This process allows you to detach and dissociate from the reactions, feelings, and thoughts and recognize that they are separate from you. They don't define who you are. And this is how you can create a shift. This hyper-awareness of your emotions and feelings allows you to form responses and behaviors to move onward and forward rather than being stuck and powerless in it. And you can have thoughts, but you don't have to think them. When you can be the observer of your thought and detach from the thought, you aren't being absorbed or hijacked by it. So observe, not absorb. You see, when you're able to feel your emotions and hold them to the light, with the help of a friend or a coach or a mentor, they actually become your biggest inspiration. They're your signposts to navigate through life. And what's masking your inspiration and vision is the discomfort of pain and suffering. And feeling discomfort's always been the biggest deterrent to growth, and it keeps you from experiencing so much more than you're capable of. Without discomfort, there's no change and no growth. You see, fear keeps us comfortable. It keeps us in what's familiar. The subconscious wants you to survive, to be safe, and to use the least amount of energy possible. So it wants you to stay where you are because it doesn't have to grow and change. Right? It's comfortable, it's safe and familiar. But when we step out of what's familiar and step outside our comfort zone, this is where the magic happens. So can you see how our subconscious can keep us in a false sense of security, and it creates fear? And with fear, we tend to do either freeze, stay where we are, or we fight to get out, or we take flight. We run away as far as we possibly can to avoid what's creating that discomfort. Imagine being able to understand and connect to the messages and learnings of your uncomfortable emotions so you can gain tremendous new inspiration and visions that can become available to you. So when you're having a hard feeling or judging yourself, try sitting with it instead of always seeking a solution or an escape. See, our emotions are not the enemy. The sensations that you feel in your body hold the key to unlocking limiting patterns, transforming stress, and generating lasting happiness. Every emotion and experience has a purpose, even the uncomfortable ones. And our culture has a lot of toxic positivity, which can be so detrimental to mental health. It's okay to have a bad day, and it's okay to have a challenging emotion. So instead of dulling what you're feeling, get curious about the feeling. What is it? What's underneath it? What's the story associated with it? What does it have to teach you? And how can you approach it from a different point of view? See, we can approach every situation with an open heart and get curious in our minds, and our life can get richer by doing it. So your body gives a constant stream of reliable information about your experience in the form of sensation. It's a library of who you are at the deepest level, including all that's happened to you and all that you dream about. And when you can completely accept where you are and what you're experiencing in each moment, it brings a beautiful feeling of peace and clarity to your existence. Let's start making sense of our emotions and the positive impact of negative emotions. I've come to learn that negative emotions are neither good nor bad. They're not actually negative. They just feel that way. They're a part of life, a part of being human. And we need to provide some space to allow that. Sometimes life is going to be difficult and challenging and incredibly hard. And this leads to the uncomfortable or negative emotions we experience. We need to learn to acknowledge and embrace and understand what those emotions are trying to tell us. We need to learn the power and value of these emotions. Now, before we go into this a little bit further, I just want to make sure that you know that I'm not a therapist or a psychologist. These are my experiences of negative emotions for myself and hundreds of people that I've worked with, and from all the research and learnings that I've had over the years. I want to honour and not underestimate the complexity of human emotions. And with that said, let's take a look at some negative emotions and understand how they can be helpful versus harmful. Let's take a look at anger. Underneath anger, we can experience being annoyed, irritated, frustrated, rage, a sense of powerlessness and resentment. And quite often, people with depression experience a lot of anger, a lot of raging anger. Sadness. So underneath sadness, we can experience loneliness, feeling isolated, feeling really low and down, very emotional, and a sense of being hurt. And I haven't put this in here, but one of the things that I get a lot with clients is that feeling of that they're disconnected from others, but also disconnected from themselves. And that creates a feeling of sadness. Let's have a look at fear. Underneath fear, we have stress, terror, feeling scared, frightened, and we worry about the future. And this is where anxiety tends to sit, right in with fear. Guilt, and underneath guilt, we can experience shame, disappointment, embarrassment, and guilt's very much about a social emotion, and we're going to get into that a bit further in a moment. But as you look at all these, we do feel and experience these emotions, and whether you acknowledge them or not, they're there. So let's get curious about our negative emotions. So get to know your feelings. And it's really interesting when you look at all these colors and shapes in all these bodies. And when I work with clients, quite often, we always tap into where we're feeling the emotion and we identify it. We start to see what shape it could be, what color, and how does it feel as a cooling color? Is it warm? Is it hot? It's really simple when we slow down and get curious about the emotion. And when we start to do this, we start to detach from the emotion and it starts to create a shift. We become the observer and start to see it and understand the messages that the emotions are trying to tell us. So going to your workbook to begin to get to know your feelings worksheet. So it often helps to be aware of how specific feelings affect us. And what I want you to do here is have a look at these feelings. And we're going through, for instance, the first one, when I'm sad. So where do I feel it in my body? My body feels, my mind is, my mood is, my energy is. I act like, and I want, I need. And then I've gone through being afraid, being angry, and guilt. So sit with this and really take your time about answering these questions. And it's a really good idea if you can think of a time when you experienced, all right, this particular emotion and look at it as if the event is on a movie screen. So you're dissociated from it, but you're looking at it and just see it play out and recall, as I said, how was your body? What was your mood like? And what was the energy like? And what did you do? But most importantly, what did you want and what did you need? This is the key to really understanding our emotions, particularly our negative emotions. So press pause and complete this worksheet. Let's have a look at anger. What do you think the purpose of anger is? Defending ourselves? Injustice? It's motivating and to set boundaries. You see, anger is a strong emotion involving lots of energy. It gets you moving to defend yourself, and it can be an appropriate response to injustice. For instance, as you see in these images, the Black movement, the Me Too movement. Anger may also lead to better outcomes in business negotiations, as well as increased motivation to right the wrongs that we see in the world. So anger's message is telling you to step up. It's motivating you to step forward. Anger helps us to set boundaries and it tells others what's important to us and to listen to what we have to say. So turning to your workbook now, let's start with anger. When we're angry, everything seems to speed up. We react pretty fast. Things escalate very quickly. But what if, when faced with anger, we could slow it down instead of speeding it up or hitting and lashing out? What if our anger was really about our feelings and not because of what someone said or should or shouldn't be doing? How would it change our approach if we saw the conflict about the anger as a need not being met? Instead of viewing our anger as something terrible or blaming others, we could choose to see anger as a sign that we're out of touch with a life-serving consciousness to ourselves, to our own feelings and needs. You see, our anger could then be a signal to slow down and connect with ourselves. So what I'd like you to do is to work through these questions. And these questions are meta questions. And so what it's doing, it's bringing your mind up to discover and be curious and tap into your subconscious. And this is your genius, and this is where the magic happens. This is where you get amazing insights into what it is that you need. So the first question here, when I'm feeling angry, what am I saying to myself? What are my thoughts? And where do I feel it in my body? What is my energy like? Is it fast? Is it hot? And how do I behave when I feel angry? Anger tells us we need courage to create change and to set boundaries. It's a motivator to create righteousness and change for injustice. And these questions, such as what do you believe about X? And what does X mean to you? Or what do you value about X? You see, these questions, it teases out the higher frames in your unconscious part of your mind. So you can discover and explore and bring things up rather than bringing the mind down and being stuck and just experiencing anger and not understanding what the message is there for you and what need is not being met. You know, one of the themes that I often see in a lot of my clients is with men in particular, with anger, they often disguise it as sadness because as boys growing up, they were not allowed to be, they were allowed to be angry but not cry. So you hear that term of, stop crying and stop being a crybaby. Whereas for women, sadness is often disguised as anger because if they threw a temper tantrum, they'd be told like, that's not ladylike. So do you understand that even sometimes that programming comes through on the way that we experience what we truly are feeling on the inside? So pause and go through all the questions in your workbook, and this helps to loosen and understand at a much deeper level about anger and what it's telling you. In particular, I just want to bring up the second question on this page. What would it be like if we took 6 deep breaths and slowed down the breathing to connect to the anger and understand what feeling and need is not being met? And the reason why I've put that in there, and it's really important to reflect on this question, is because the moment that we get the stimulus, whatever it is that's caused the anger to come up, we instantly react. By doing this 6 deep breaths, what you're actually doing is creating space between stimulus and response. So there's a difference between react and response. When we don't have that space, we react instantly. But when we understand the anger, we start to look at it from a very different perspective. And when we can create that space, we can make a new decision and respond from a place of empowerment rather than just getting in there and blowing up with rage, which is actually disempowering. The emotion is therefore controlling you at that point. And so what I've done here is, if you have a look at the reflection question down the bottom, if you have noticed any negative emotions and or influences that have come up for you, write them down in this space. What triggers them? Where did they come from? Do you know anyone else that displays these, or are you triggered by them through someone else? What would it mean to you to finally clear the negative emotion and influence it has over you? How different would you feel? I want to talk to you about a client that came to see me, Claire. She was a career woman and got married and then had children, and she found herself at home full time with 3 kids under 6. So her life had completely changed. But what also changed was the way that she was dealing with her emotions. And she found herself being a very angry mother every single day, constantly yelling at her children, and she didn't like who she was becoming. But when she came to see me and we started working through her emotions, she realized what anger was telling her. And it was really about establishing healthy boundaries. And I remember she came in and she said to me one day, "Well, I had to even look up what healthy boundaries were. I had no idea." So this is what was happening in her world. She had a need that was not being met. So she just felt that all these things that were happening to her were creating this anger, but she didn't know how to listen to the anger and how to turn it around and understand what the anger was telling her. And once she realized that, she could set the healthy boundaries and she could start responding to her kids from a place of compassion and understanding than through all the anger. So her life changed around when she started to understand and connect to the messages of her anger. Let's look at fear. Fear is an emotional response to an actual threat, and it's a fundamental survival mechanism that's served us well, particularly in primitive times. When you're in immediate danger, like if a lion is chasing you, you feel fear because it's telling you to get yourself someplace safe. So in this case, it is about survival. Yet for, say, someone at work and you're being asked to do something new and outside your usual job, fear creeps in as if the lion is chasing you and you feel under such threat. That fear is telling us that we're stepping outside our comfort zone, and it's actually not life-threatening. Fear is also a true emotional response when you're about to lose someone or something that's important to you. So it's not just about personal safety. We can fear the loss of a loved one to an illness or to losing our home to unemployment. And COVID has certainly invoked a lot of fear and triggered a lot of fear in people. But for many people who have struggled with weight loss and tried so many different things in the past but have failed, this actually provides evidence in your subconscious to justify the fear of failure. And this is why so many people don't get far in achieving their goals in life. But what if our past failures could instead provide evidence that your odds are now better than ever? That you can actually take the learnings from the past to do things differently and better. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to challenge the thoughts behind your fears and begin a new strategy on how to understand and overcome your fears. So when you go to your workbook, you've got the following questions that are designed to help you identify what you're afraid of, see the consequences of your fear, and then take meaningful steps towards overcoming it. So the first question here is about thinking about when you feel fear, when it starts to rise within you. What exactly am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of it? What negative outcomes am I imagining here? And what thoughts am I trying to avoid? You see, fear tells us we're stepping outside our comfort zone. We're doing something new and we're doing something different. And when we do something different, that's when we start to grow and evolve. Because when you think about it, if we stay stuck where we are and in what's familiar, how are we growing and evolving? We're not. We're just staying with the same old, same old. And this is why you're here right now. So let's have a look at your fears. These questions to help you to unpack what fear is really saying to you. So when do I feel most afraid? What things trigger my fear? How is this fear hurting my relationships? How is it keeping me from being happy? How is it hindering me from achieving my goals? How is it taking me out of the present? Because remember, a lot of fears are future paced. And how is it affecting my health? And what opportunities will I miss out on if I give in to my fear? How would it change my life if I wasn't afraid? And which elements of this fear are not under my control? Am I wasting time and energy on things I can't control? And which things are under my control? What actions will I take to reduce the biological symptoms of the fear? And this could be the breathing exercise that I spoke about when we were working through anger. When we do deep breathing, what it does, it is actually desensitizing your sympathetic nervous system. And instead, what we're doing is the deep breathing is activating your parasympathetic nervous system. This is your rest and digest so that you can calm down. And when you calm down in that state, you can start to have a different perspective of what's driving the fear. How can I replace fear with gratitude? What steps will I take to be mindful and present? And who can I enlist to help me overcome my fears? These are really powerful questions to loosen the hold that fear can often take. Let's look at what fear can be telling you. Fears can show you how deeply you care about something or someone. When you're afraid of looking stupid, it's because you value intelligence and you want to show that you're able to perform with high attention to detail, or at least do your very best. Fear of abandonment. You want a loving and genuine relationship, and it can tell you which relationship needs repairing. Fear of failure is another big one, and this can cripple a lot of people into not acting at all because they feel that they're not good enough. However, this fear shows you how badly you actually do want to succeed. Fear of animals, insects, reptiles, natural disasters, and anything to do with nature. This typically is telling you that you are disconnected from natural life and don't fully understand the function of every living thing on earth. A fear of darkness says that you have a fear of the unknown, which you cannot see, you cannot defend against. However, this kind of fear means that you should look closer at your other senses, including your intuition. And fear of flying and fear of heights should really be named fear of crashing and fear of jumping. This means that you highly value your life. And fear of heights can mean that you fear your own balance. And this could be physical balance or even spiritual balance. So sometimes when we step outside of what's really keeping us back, that fear that's got this false story around it, when you can loosen and unpack that, you can actually gain so much more wisdom and discover so much more that you can do when you step outside your comfort zone. Guilt. When we bury the story, we forever stay the subject of the story. If we own the story, we get to narrate the ending. Isn't that a beautiful quote? So we're going to have a look at guilt, because if we don't understand what guilt is trying to tell us and what we can do with the emotion of guilt, it can eat away at us. So go into your workbook now. I want you to examine the origins of your guilt. Think of a moment, something that happened where you felt guilt. Is the reason that you feel guilt rational and reasonable? Inappropriate or irrational guilt involves feeling guilty in relation to something that in reality you had little or nothing to do with. So working through the questions, have a look at the next one. Apologize or just seek peace. Is there something you can say or do in order to try to show that you are willing to make peace where there's been hurt, conflict, or disagreement? In your own words, What's the difference between guilt and shame? Describe how it feels in your body or how you behave differently when each individual feeling comes up. And I've got some examples there. It could be avoidance. It could be that you apologize, or maybe that you overcompensate. And with the apology, quite often we can over apologize. So, what's the message with guilt? Guilt tells us that we can do better next time. It creates a moral compass based on our values, our morals, and the standards that we live our life by. Is there anything in my life right now that I feel guilty about? What actions can I take to make amends? Is there any part of my life that I feel ashamed of right now? Am I avoiding dealing with this? Now, these questions, they help you to unpack the hold that guilt can have. And when we can unpack it, we can start to see solutions and how we can move out of guilt and shame. Let's have a look at sadness. How is sadness showing up for you? Where do you feel it in your body? What is sadness trying to tell you right now? What does it want you to know? What do you think the purpose of sadness is for? Let's go back to first principles. How many of you have kids? Let's think back to our childhood or to our children in our lives. So when a child is crying, what are they calling out for? Yeah, sadness is a call out for love and connection. And quite often when we feel sadness, we feel things like loneliness. We feel like no one understands us. So sadness tells us we want love and connection, and it's a time to slow down, withdraw, so that we can heal from pain and loss. It's very much a slow energy, which is why we feel the need to retreat and to go inward with our thoughts and our feelings. Is there any action that you need to take as a result of feeling sadness? And what can you do to help alleviate some of the uncomfortable or unwanted result of feeling sad? And what can you do right now to feel better? Now, I've worked with clients where they're in extreme sadness and feel lonely. And there is a difference between feeling lonely and experiencing solitude. And when we feel lonely, as I mentioned before, it's about feeling disconnected. And quite often it's disconnected from others, yes. It's also disconnected from yourself. Because when we sit in solitude, we're actually happy to be on our own because we actually get energized. We charge ourselves by having that sense of solitude. It's a bit of time out, whether it's self-care, doing the things that you love to do in solitude, to have time to yourself. But when it comes to feeling sad with loneliness, I'll give you an example. I've got a client, Chris, and he felt a lot of sadness. But when we worked through the sadness, he realized that he's got precious memories and he connected through his senses. He could smell the memory. He could see the memory in his mind, and it was of his Nana and Pop. And whenever he felt sadness, he reflected back that one day when he felt extreme sadness, he said to himself, I know there's something that makes me happy. And his mind in that moment took him way back to his Nan and Pop's house. And he said, I could smell and see and feel climbing up the willow tree and her cooking. And he said that sadness, it dissipated. So we have within us the ability to work through emotions. All our emotions are there to signal something to us. And it's about working through them and not being stuck in the emotion. So go through your workbook, through each of the emotions, and really think about your answers. And remember, it's the first thing that comes up for you. We are human beings and we experience emotions. And when we can make friends with all our emotions, even the negative ones, our life can be so much more enriched. When we don't ignore the signs and the messages from our negative emotions and we suppress them, we bury them alive, as I mentioned before, and that causes us dis-ease. And we're here to experience so much more. So let's make friends with your emotions and move on with better feelings and a better way of experiencing life. Meta states or neurosemantic states. This refers to the thoughts and feelings that we have about our previous thoughts and feelings. And I'll give you an example. Just say at work you become angry in response to something that happened in the environment. So say someone didn't do something that you asked them to do and you get angry. So that's your primary state. And then what happens is you get frustrated with yourself for being angry. That's the meta state. And if it's not frustration, then you might feel guilty after the frustration. So you see how we start to stack on all these emotions to the original response that we had. The key here is to tap into that primary state emotion and understand what's the meaning of that emotion from the beginning and what it's trying to tell us. Then we don't need to metastate and stack all the negative emotions and allowing them to take over and us being left feeling disempowered. What came up for you? Where do you think it came from? Most of our past programming comes from our primary caregivers, typically our parents, during those early imprinting years. Now, we're not blaming them, but we are looking at the experience objectively and to realize that our parents' lives are not our lives. If we continually are being influenced by our parental programming, we cannot be the author of our own life. But when we understand and see our parents' programming, we can start writing a new chapter in our life story. When you were born, the doctor or the midwife had to physically disconnect the umbilical cord, right? So that you can walk alongside each other in life and not inside each other's lives. Otherwise, you're spreading toxins to each other. So just like the physical and biological disconnection is required to live a healthy life, we also need to disconnect the negative emotional and mental connections to live a healthy life. Now, we're going to talk about some of the things that we need to disconnect from. And there are 4 negative responses to past programming. And the first one is adopting and repeating behaviors. This is where you say or do the same or similar to what your parents did. And for many people, they don't realize this until much later in their adult years. You may have heard the phrase, you're just like mum or dad. Maybe you're the same hard worker or the tire kicker, or you get angry at everything because that's what's familiar and programmed into you. And the next one is rebellious. This is doing the opposite because you don't want the same as what you experienced growing up. Then the overcompensating. This is the people pleaser. So instead of feeling angry, you become the people pleaser, being super nice. And in the end, you become resentful because you spent your life pleasing everyone else but yourself. Then the one who escapes, the one who runs away, who physically escapes from the circumstances and experiences. And they might be temporarily okay for a while. However, what happens is we take the programming with us because it's in our mind, in our subconscious mind, and we end up in the same circumstances, or perhaps you're doing it in spite of your parents to prove something. Whatever has come up for you, all these behaviors are driven by beliefs in the unconscious, running programs in our daily lives. And this is why hypnosis recordings that you're about to embark on are so powerful at reprogramming our unconscious mind to empower change and a new way of experiencing life. You see, if you sink your awareness into your sensations, they will begin to reveal what's going on beneath the surface. The awareness of emotion as energy has had a significant impact on how to heal emotional wounds, stuck patterns, emotional reactivity, depression, anxiety, and trauma. Embracing, understanding, and transforming our emotions connects us to ourselves, and it gives us incredible insights into what we love and what we want to live a happy and fulfilling life. Can you see now that we make decisions based on our emotions, and they are essential to the rational process? Triggers exist because they haven't allowed themselves to feel their emotions. And when we understand the messages that our emotions are telling us, we can make more confident choices and decisions in our life. Know the rules by which you're living by. So grab your workbook and we're going to go through and do an audit of your life and your behaviors, your attitudes, your actions, your routines, your values, and your beliefs that run in your life. Think about your life. What unwritten rules have you made for yourself that you need to break? And this is really interesting to get these sorts of insights. And it could be something like, for instance, oh, no, I don't do that because we were never taught to do that. So that's a rule. So that stops you from doing something because you haven't been taught. There are so many rules that we put in our lives and that we live by. Then we're going to get flexible about how we're going to break those rules so that we can get a different result. Because if we don't get a different result, what's at risk if you don't make the shifts in your life? So grabbing your workbook, these are the questions to work through. And really think about the story that you tell yourself about your life, because within these stories, this is where we create rules about what we can and can't do. This is where our limitations sit. So what rules have you made for yourself that you now need to break? And examples, as I mentioned before, could be different statements that you consciously say out aloud, and even in your mind. I'm queen of never letting my guard down. I believe that the more walls I put up, the less pain I'll have to feel if someone lets me down. Maybe I'm a creature of habit and I like to do things that I know and that I already enjoy because it's safe. So you see how that's a limitation? There's a word that's called masturbation, and it involves having steadfast rules about how you and others should or must behave. The emotional consequences when expectations are not met is anger, frustration, resentments, and guilt. The road to hell is paved with shoulds and oughts, and we're breaking the shoulds and oughts. So looking at one rule, what can you do that is different? That if you had no fear, no restrictions, and is worthwhile to you to do right now. We set rules to protect ourselves, but sometimes we need to break those rules to find ourselves. And if that scares you, perhaps that's the very thing that you need to do. However, you don't need to do it alone, and you're not. If you're ready to take charge and master your inner power and live a life free from self-sabotage, anxiety, stress, and worry, then you've got a chance to go deeper on your journey and turn it into your best life that you can live. And we've started that journey right now. And I'm looking forward to the next 10 weeks as you learn a new set of rules to live your life by. Now, I promised how to cultivate laser focus and clarity in an area of your life to create balance and harmony. How to connect with what's important to you to create a vision and be the person who clearly knows what they want. How to shed limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck and holding you back from living an amazing life. And how emotions are signposts to navigate our way through life to gain tremendous new inspiration and motivation that drives you towards success and happiness. And how to create new rules to inspire you and to achieve so much more in your life. Well, we've come to the end of the Overcome Self-Sabotage Behaviour workshop, and I want to thank you for all your attention. Now, the workbook is there for you to continue to work through, because right now our journey does continue as we retrain your brain with hypnosis for weight loss. But what I want you to understand is that doing this workshop was really about getting you to understand where all those beliefs are formed and how we formed them. But more importantly, it's about understanding and giving you hope that you can break those beliefs that no longer serve you and form a new set of beliefs that drive you to the person that you want to be and the life that you want to live. And we're going to start that right now.